This is the Grande Hotel in Beira City, Mozambique, once a symbol of elegance and ambition. Back in the 1950s when it was built, it was the biggest and most luxurious in all of Africa, a place that once screamed hope, pride, and power. And this is the same place today. Broken walls, families living in what was once gold and marble, a silent witness to a dream that rose and fell.
Everybody must be accorded his full political rights, whether he be white or black, educated or uneducated, rich or poor. And this is exactly why we are at the moment struggling to earn for our people one man, one vote.
That was the dream: freedom, justice, and the power to decide our own future. Across the continent, people believed independence would bring prosperity. Flags rose, anthems filled the air, and for the first time, Africa was in African hands. But dreams fade faster than speeches. The wars ended, yet the struggle had only begun. From Beira to Kinshasa, from Accra to Luanda, hope slowly turned into survival. So what happened? How did a continent once so full of promise end up with ruins where there should have been progress? Was it betrayal? Mismanagement? Or were we handed broken systems never meant to succeed? Is it fair to keep blaming colonialism for Africa's failures, or is it time to look inward? After independence, Africa finally had control, at least on paper. But freedom without structure is like a car without a steering wheel. And the truth? Many countries crashed fast. We like to blame colonialism, and yes, it left chaos. But after independence, we made choices. We created systems that rewarded loyalty over competence. We replaced dictators with new ones, and we called it democracy. Look at Zimbabwe. In 1980, the country had one of the best economies in Africa: fertile land, industry, and education. 2 decades later, corruption and political violence turned it into a shadow of itself. Mozambique? Civil war. Angola? Oil wealth, but poverty everywhere. Congo? Minerals worth trillions, yet people dying poor. How can a continent so rich stay so poor? It's not that Africans can't lead. Botswana proved it can be done. They discovered diamonds, but instead of stealing, they invested. They built schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Just leadership that cared more about the nation than the throne. That's what most of Africa missed. We can't keep pretending the problem is only the past. Yes, colonialism planted the seed, but we watered it with corruption, greed, and silence. So ask yourself, how long will we keep blaming those who left while the ones destroying us live among us? Africa doesn't need pity, it needs responsibility. Real change starts when truth becomes louder than excuses. They said Africa was free, but free from what and for whom? Because when the colonial powers left, they didn't really leave. They changed their clothes, switched flags, and came back as investors, partners, and advisors. The chains became invisible. Contracts, loans, and trade deals replaced the guns. Look at the map. Africa's borders were never drawn for Africans. Lines made by men who had never set foot in Africa divided tribes, united enemies, and created nations that made no sense. And decades later, we still live inside that map, fighting over borders that were never ours. When independence came, we inherited schools that taught obedience, not innovation. Economies built to export raw materials, not to manufacture anything. Systems designed to serve others, not to serve us. That's why even today, most African countries export what they don't eat and import what they could make. Ghana grows cocoa but buys chocolate from Europe. Nigeria exports oil but imports petrol. The Congo has cobalt powering smartphones around the world, but its own children mine it with bare hands. This isn't freedom, it's a sophisticated trap. After independence, France created the CFA franc, a currency still controlled from Paris. 14 African nations still depend on it. Every year, billions in African reserves sit in French banks, earning interest. For France, is that independence or just a new kind of slavery? Then came the loans. In the 1980s and 90s, the IMF and World Bank flooded Africa with development programs. Sounds nice, right? But every loan came with conditions. And in the end, we paid more in debt than we ever received in aid. The result? Africa became trapped, producing for others, borrowing to survive, and begging to rebuild. Colonialism didn't die. It evolved. Now it wears suits, not uniforms. It speaks through debt, not armies. It controls through trade, not guns. But here's the twist. Africa's story is not one of weakness. It's a story of resilience, struggle, and unmatched potential. We've survived colonizers, dictators, civil wars, and economic traps. Yet here we are, alive, aware, and ready to write the next chapter. The failures of the past are clear. Corruption, tribalism, poor governance, and dependence on foreign powers slowed our growth. Colonialism didn't help, but neither did ignoring our own responsibilities. What will Africa do next? Education must be Africa's weapon. Industries must be Africa's backbone. Unity must be Africa's shield. Look at nations like Rwanda and Botswana. Smart policies, investment in people, and long-term planning turned hardship into progress. They show that leadership and accountability can rewrite history, even in places once devastated. Africa must produce, innovate, and trade for itself. Raw materials are not enough. Value must be added here. Agriculture, energy, and education, these are the keys to independence that lasts. The youth are already rising. Entrepreneurs, engineers, and thinkers are building solutions for local problems. The path forward is clear, but it requires courage. Courage to hold leaders accountable. Courage to believe that Africa can finally govern itself, for itself. Because Africa's future will not be inherited. It will be built by those who refuse to repeat the mistakes of yesterday and who dare to dream bigger than the world ever imagined. Africa is not a story of despair. It's a story of power waiting to be claimed, and the time to claim it is now.